It is a day, and I don't know what day it is, but here we are.
It's Tuesday or Thursday, depending on how you count these things.
Yeah, I was just kind of looking at the stuff I got to get done. I'm like, it's Tuesday, right? Because there's a lot to get done by the end of the week.
Yeah. Yeah. I need this week to end, as short as it is. Probably doesn't help that I drink myself to sleep every night now because of the holiday hangover.
I mean, that is maybe not the doctor preferred way to go to sleep every night, but it is one way.
It's totally cool, Brad. I'm going back on keto for the month of January, so it's just like rum and vodka. It's good. It's all healthy. It's good.
Yeah. It's
doctor approved. You don't have to worry.
Fantastic. Well, I wish you the best with those ambitions and beverages.
Right. Such as they are.
But we have a more important topic to talk about here, Paul. Apple's stock empire is crumbling right now, and it's all your fault.
You know, you could open any news site or newspaper or whatever, and you would see this Apple story pretty close to the top. You know, I know there's some other stuff going on in the world, obviously, but government shutdown and whatnot. Do you know where that's not the case? In the Apple News app, Brad, I had to scroll down quite a few screens to see any mention of this.
Oh, really?
It was kind of tiny and buried in a little headline with other stuff. In fact, the top one, which was just a very minor story, commingled Ford and Apple both having problems with China. So it's, just so we're clear, it's not just Apple.
Wow, that's a story within itself. I mean, that's crap.
Yep, I think so. And by the way, it's worse than you think. The news that I get in the Apple News app, which, by the way, they do a reasonable job, but it is incredibly Apple heavy. There are multiple sections for Apple News, like Apple, iPhone, software, hardware, mobile devices, smartphone. Like Apple comes up again and again and again. Well, and when you get down to the actual, I should have brought this thing in here. It's really funny. Let me see if I can get this right. Yeah. When you get down to the actual Apple section, the top story with a huge graphic is a picture of an iPod, and it's from the Cult of Mac, which says the Apple Watch is bigger than the iPod ever was. And by the way, completely not true. That's actually not the case. But that's the top Apple story today in Apple News, or it was this morning when I read the news. I'm sure this changes.
For a company that preaches themselves to be holier than holy, and the high watermark for ethics and all that stuff, to intentionally, because they made, I want to say it was recently that Tim Cook or somebody from Apple was promoting that the reason why their Apple News app is so good is because they don't use algorithms, they use people. Right?
I was just going to add that very fact. The thing that makes it unique, not that there isn't probably some human intervention at other news aggregators, but that's you're exactly right. It's human driven. It is the future of journalism, Brad. The Apple-centric future of journalism. Anyway, I don't want to put too much into I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on and on about that.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a big story, and it certainly deserves some
it is all your fault, too. I mean, it's
all my fault.
You want me to prove it?
Okay.
Which one of us bought a brand new iPhone this year?
Actually, no, but go on.
Which one of us bought a brand new iPhone this year? Raise your hand.
Okay, hold on a second.
Yep, there you go. Paul's fault.
Hold on a second. I bought a brand new MacBook Air. And I spent way more on that than you did on your phone.
Did you?
Way more. Yeah. Well, $1,700.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah. I was like, well, I did buy the stupid
one.
I
upgraded everything, Brad. I did as much as I could for this company. Now, granted, I did buy an iPad. I also bought an iPad, actually. 9.7. I got that one on sale, but I mean, we're over $2,000 now. But I did buy an iPhone XS, 10s, and an iPhone 10R, and then returned both of them. They were very gracious about it.
Maybe not so much today.
Yeah, today they might be a harder sell. What if we gave you a $100 gift certificate? Would you hold on to that thing? You got to get off the table, cat. Come on, go away. There you go.
I thought that was the Apple people telling you got to get off the table.
Anyways,
so as of 11:06 a.m. on January 3rd, their market cap right now is $680 billion, which is still a lot. but it's not.
Yeah, but that's
but
I
if you
checked it
remember,
last night. It was over 700.
in early August, it hit 1 trillion.
Yeah, so it's not really the same quarter, but when you talk about record setting, hitting a trillion was an interesting milestone. Having your value fall by a third, like 1 quarter later, yikes! Now, as much as I hate to do this, to be fair to Apple, stocks are down across the board, especially tech stocks. I mean, Microsoft has fallen as well recently, but they're still ahead of Apple right now for some reason. And it looks like that trend's going to continue for a little while. And then, of course, there's all these questions around things like there's kind of half-truths all over this Apple statement. They talk about global economic conditions and blah, 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 whatever it is. There was a story I saw that, like, here's why Samsung won't have the same problems in China that Apple does. A big part of Apple's problem in China isn't trade wars or tariffs or anything like that. It's that homegrown competition has gotten really good. Yeah. Companies like Huawei and Xiaomi, I think it's called, and Oppo have all surged over the past year or two. So, yeah, Apple sales maybe have fallen there, but these other companies have seen growth. And I think there's a lot of things, buying fatigue and so forth. Apple fatigue, frankly, I think that's a thing. But we can't. I don't know.
There's
Samsung,
just other
by the
good
way,
phones. I mean, that's the thing.
What's that?
There's just other good phones. I mean, for a while, you could argue that Apple was building better phones than the competition, right? They came out with the high resolution display. They came out with really good cameras, and then it was just kind of it. Like, right? I mean, a great resolution display is no longer a reason why you buy a phone. A great camera is not why you buy the Apple
phones have the lowest resolutions. Actually, I mean, I would say Apple's been kind of late to the game on a lot of things for a long time, but they've always weathered it, Yeah. And Apple benefited from an unprecedented and unrepeatable set of factors where they had three kind of, well, at least two, and then 2.5 big products in a row that could kind of feed off each other, while being able to expand into new markets. Like, one of the key things about the iPhone's success over a period of time is that it went from one carrier in the U.S. to multiple carriers in the U.S. to one carrier each in a couple of Western European countries to and then there was always like a new market to conquer, Yeah. And China being such a big one, obviously, is super important. Well, it's literally the biggest market for sustaining that growth. I think there's an interesting. I might look at this. I don't know if I would write this up yet. This is just kind of off the top of my head. I was thinking about this earlier today. There's probably an interesting comparison to be had to see where we are in time in Apple, in the we'll call it in Apple's history in the iPhone's period of dominance or whatever, and compare it to Microsoft with Windows, right? When Steve Jobs came back to Apple in 1990, end of 90, it was 97, I guess, technically end of 96, they experienced 20 years of growth.
Yeah.
Right. And now that's starting to get wobbly. And if you look at Microsoft's, I'm just doing this off the top of my head, so I'm not sure if this actually works out. But if you look at, like, you think about Windows, like Windows and Microsoft's dominance of the computer industry started with Windows 3.1, which was 1993. If you flash forward to like 25 years, Windows 95, Windows 98, and probably just about, well, not quite Windows XP, but these things have happened. This is the upward curve,
Yeah.
And then for a variety of factors, their dominance and influence fall off the face of the earth after that. But it takes a while. It does take a while. Like you were saying on Twitter yesterday, accurately, anyone who thinks that the iPhone's business is just going to disappear is, nuts or whatever. Because that's not how these things happen. But when you do have a single product that's the core of everything you do and is the majority of the money you make, if you can't diversify beyond that, you could be in trouble, know, and it's not going to happen overnight, but that's a problem. That is absolutely a problem.
It is. And we will, Apple's still going to continue to sell a whole bunch of iPhones for a very long time. It's just not going to be,
including in this quarter, right?
Yeah. they're going to sell probably 30 to 40 million of them. It's going to be a huge amount of money. They said, Apple said in their note that they had $130 billion in the bank. They can just go and buy just about anything that they want, anything out of probably like the Fortune, probably 30 companies. Anything below that, they can just go grab them without even thinking about it. It's just, there's a saturation.
Move. They do have to move.
Yeah.
By the time Windows lost its dominant position, Microsoft had already established businesses that were bigger than Windows,
right?
Including Office and Server / what was become Cloud. And it had gone into other markets that some of which panned out, some of which didn't. Xbox and video games and so forth. But Apple, geez, they keep talking like services has hit 10 billions. At 10 billion or whatever it is, record, and that's fantastic. But when you look at it in a chart, the iPhone is up here, and services is like this tiny little thing. So if the iPhone falls apart, those services disappear too. By the way, right? Nobody's paying for Apple services if they're not using iPhones.
Right.
That's why those two things are logically tied together. This really is it really does have the potential to snowball, and I don't mean to. I'm not doing the John Dvorak thing, like Apple is doomed or whatever. That I don't. It's not a knee-jerk thing, but these problems, some of which are Apple-specific, some of which are just industry-wide, are going to hit Apple really hard. Really, really hard.
Yeah.
Because they just don't have anything else to fall back on.
Well, this is going to be one of those times where we will look back in history and say Apple figured out how to use the cash flow from the iPhone to propel other businesses, much like Microsoft used the cash flow from Windows to build up Azure and build its cloud services. The iPhone will continue to make money for a very long time. It just won't be, it'll be like Windows. It won't be a major growth segment, but it will bring in money, and they'll know, we'll hit a happy medium where maybe it's 25 million phones every quarter. Still a lot of money coming in.
Still amazing if that's what it is.
But it's not growth. But the question will be is how do they turn that corner to figure out the next business? And we've talked about this many times on here, that the iPhone is a once-in-a-generation product. It's just like Windows.
Just like Windows.
Yep. And so the question is how does Apple secure its future beyond a world where iPhone is just kind of stagnant in its sales, where it's bringing in money, but it's not a growth thing? And how do they move beyond that?
Here's the problem for Apple. They announced recently they're not going to show unit sales, and the reason they're not going to do that is because they're going to go down, and they don't want look. I don't like that decision, but I will say this: there is a thing that occurs with the stock market where bad news kind of feeds on itself, and so even though you can make a logical argument, like of course iPhone sales went down, the market is saturated, this is completely logical. That's not how Wall Street works. There's going to be like a fire sale on the stock, and it's going to be a nightmare.
Right.
So I get why they do that, but unfortunately, once they've made this decision, they have narrowed the metrics they can use to show success, and now there's a ticking time bomb here, because this quarter will show growth from the previous quarter a year ago, probably, right? It's going to, I think only the revenues are going, profits will go up. They'll be able to show that. Different market segments have all grown. It's going to be hugely positive. That's not always going to be the case.
Yep.
And that's the problem, because this thing where they raise the average selling price of their products, it did not work. And now they have, what are they going to do? Lower prices this year? The revenues are going to go down. The profits are going to go down. It becomes a spiral after a while. So I think what you said is the important bit. They have $130 billion in cash, essentially.
Yep.
It's time to spend that money, and it's time to really invest in things that you think could become the future of the company.
Yeah,
because
they need strategic bets.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, this is. As I say this, I feel like people are going to think, "Oh, see, I'm saying Apple is doomed." I don't mean it like that. But I watched Microsoft. I mean, I saw what happened. That perception has a way of, pulling into reality. It's only now, decades later, that Microsoft's stock price has surged for some reason. I don't think they've made any dramatic changes or anything.
Yeah.
There's people are just in love with this company. Investor people, I guess.
I don't know if the investors are anymore. I mean, I guess it depends when you got out.
Well, I think that if any investor looking at these companies, right, not that Apple and Microsoft are necessarily comparable, they're directly comparable, but they're both ginormous American tech companies. I think the key takeaway is what we just discussed. Apple has one product and a bunch of other little things. And if that one product dies, it's over.
Yeah.
And Microsoft is pretty diversified. You know, if some Azure service is discontinued next week, no one's going to notice because there are 1,200 of them, and they're really diversified. So,
yeah,
I mean, honestly, Apple in some ways is more interesting than that Microsoft I just described, at least to me. I'm more interested in personal technology, but anyway, it is a problem.
Yeah, we will see what happens in the weeks, months, and, well, years to come. But I mean, it really is just a two-horse race between iOS and Android. So there's always going to be some sales, right, that are people who just don't want Android phones, which is fine, and they're just going to buy whatever Apple makes them. But I think it's fair to say a lot of things have just been commoditized, and there's not that's it.
Yeah, I mean, you've compared iPhone, I think, to like the Toyota Camry, essentially, right? It's the safe choice. It's kind of middle of the road. It's you know it's going to work for a long time. It's going to be great. You're not going to have any problems. I don't know what life is like for the Toyota Camry buyer, but I would imagine 3 generations of Camrys later, you're like, maybe we should look across the street. I could picture people getting bored of the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. They very much could, and it's. We will see. Maybe Apple will finally get a little bit more aggressive with its OS and maybe let us move icons to wherever we want instead of some grid that they have bastardly forced us into forever.
Seriously, it's 2019 now. That thing was announced in 2007. 12 years later, iOS has gotten a fresh coat of paint for sure, but they still don't put the icons.
You can't move the icons to just any sort of grid pattern you want.
Unbelievable.
It is. If it's not in order, you don't get to do it.
I mean, I would be shocked if they didn't fix that this year. I know that last year they kind of cut off a bunch of stuff they might have shipped in iOS 12 in order to focus on fit and finish and the performance stuff on the older systems. And I applaud that. It's time. It's just time.
It is. The only other thing worth commenting on in that letter, which was very oddly worded, is that they said, hey, our battery replacement program made people buy fewer phones, mostly because everyone realized that if you put a new battery in there, it doesn't slow your phone down, and then it's fine.
Yeah, there's been a lot of debate around that program and iOS 12 and the way that it makes older devices run better, the first time that's ever happened. For some reason, people will argue with me when I make this point, but obviously iOS has always been engineered to run on the newest version of the iPhone, and they never did anything to make it work well on the other ones. That was on purpose, obviously.
Yep.
The net result was that your phone often felt slower when a new iOS release came out. But it's hard to argue that Apple did the right thing, and I don't mean the right thing ethically. I mean the right thing for the company, because a lot of their reputation and their just premium kind of hardware maker status has to do with quality. And when that quality disappears, it becomes a problem. Like they've been kind of existing for a long time on high scores at Consumer Reports because people go to the store and Apple just silently fixes things and no one ever complains. And there are these problems that have been going on that you don't really hear about.
Yeah.
If we start hearing about problems in iPhones and iOS and bending iPads and whatever it is, that's going to chip away at this whole edifice as well. And this is part of the problem. You only have this one product. There's all kinds of reasons why people might stop buying this thing. So they're in kind of a delicate spot.
Yeah. We will see what shall happen. A couple other random tidbits. Mozilla is going to overhaul Thunderbird, at least the UI. Hopefully they make it look exactly like Newton, and then I will use it. Chrome is getting a dark mode.
I installed Thunderbird today real quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thinking about Newton and your problems and my own issues with email clients, and my God, it's like going back to the 1990s.
Yeah.
This is the most old-fashioned-y thing I've ever. It's like using a Telnet client or something. It's just like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
It's terrible. I hope they fix it.
Yeah, just make it look new and modern and clean and not...
Show me something that's, I have 2 accounts. I just want the inbox, unread messages, or stuff I haven't archived.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's not like that. It's like a giant folder trees and
yeah,
that's terrible. 3-pane view.
Yep. And so, well, there's a bunch of other random stuff, but we got a show tomorrow, which is going to be live. And Paul, do you still have those codes and didn't use them all on yourself, hopefully?
I didn't use any on myself. I do have the codes. So how are we going to do this? Like I did, with the first set of 10,
mm-hmm.
We created a post.
Yep.
Or I created, whatever. And people commented which ones they wanted. I actually figured out a pretty easy way to do this too. It was pretty cool. I was going to actually capture all the text and run it through like a script where I kind of stripped out stuff. And then I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to do it this way. It wasn't too bad. Speaking of which, I haven't heard back from 2 people. Should probably follow up on that. But anywho.
Anyways, so there's a chat room.
What was your thought?
There's a chat room.
Yeah, but are we just going to randomly... I don't think we should put numbers into the chat room. Is that what you were thinking? Like, I don't want people to scramble,
Well, what we could do is just call out the username and just say, hey, email paul@thurrott.com. And then they just have to prove that username is theirs, and then you just send them the code.
Yeah.
Or you can just drop them in
saves
and do whatever.
No, that's not.
No, I know people will, but
I don't want a pig pile.
You could script it.
Plus, someone could potentially get 2 somehow.
That is true.
Is the chat transcript saved? Like, can we?
I know you can go back in time. And like if you rewatch the podcast, you can pull the chat back up, and it's like the messages post like in simulated real time, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so you could do it that way.
It syncs to the show.
So what you could do, in theory, is say, hey, just anybody leaves a comment in the chat room, then go back through.
How about when we do the live show, you make a post on the site?
Mm-hmm.
What if we just did it the way we did it before? Where people could go to the post and leave a comment.
Just make a comment on the post.
That actually worked pretty well.
Well, then why screw with it? Let's not toss a wrench in the iPhone business here. Why not let people just make a comment on that post, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. And then my final question is, does it make, which we probably should have done offline, what the heck?
There we are.
Should we limit the enrollment or whatever to the duration of the show, or should we keep it open for people who were not able to actually watch it live?
I think we should keep it open.
Yeah,
I think that's only because it's only 30 minutes, very specific time window.
All right. Yep. So here's what I'll do. Tomorrow morning, I will post an article explaining how this is going to work.
Yep.
So this will be part 2. Actually, I just got I don't pay attention to this too much, but I got FedEx and UPS shipping notifications in email, and I wonder if that might be the Microsoft hardware. So maybe by tomorrow I'll have some news on that front as well. But anyway, I'll put a post on the site, say today we're going to do this thing. This is how we're going to do it. There'll be some time frame. I think for the last one I had it run through 5 p.m. that day, and I actually extended it. It went a little longer than that. But so if we do the live show at 1, I don't want this eating into my Friday night, but I mean, I probably won't be able to get to this till Saturday anyway. So 24 hours is too much, or
I think it's whatever. Whatever you pick, someone will complain either way.
Oh, did I send you the one horrible? I don't think I did. I actually got a really horrible email from someone, and I showed it to my wife. And she was like, "Oof, like what's going on here?" And so I wrote the guy back, and I just said, "Look, everything that you say we did is not true." And this is how it actually happened, and here's what the time frames are. And I posted all of this information to the site, and I thought to myself, the only appropriate response to this is, you're right, I'm sorry, I guess I overreacted. And he just wrote me back another awful email saying, I don't think you understand what I'm saying. This is not what happened, and blah, blah. And I was like, what the fuck? What is going on here? So you can't win.
No, you really can't.
By trying,
You can't.
All right, but anyway, tomorrow morning, like I said, I will put a post up on the site ahead of the show.
Yep.
and then we will leave it open past the show, which is probably the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's easy enough. See?
Yep.
Look at that. We solved world hunger and Apple's business model all in a podcast.
Apple, here's how you compete in China. Oh, actually, it goes contrary to your whole privacy thing. It's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, the other one is just buy Huawei. I guess that's the other option.
Yeah, buy Huawei. But they wouldn't allow that.
Yeah, which has its own challenges considering it's partially owned by the government. And yeah. So, all right, you got anything else for today, Mr. Thurrott?
Just an editorial I'm working on about AI and privacy, and I think I have some really good advice from Microsoft. I will let that one.
A bated breath or something like that. So,
all
right, folks. Well, that wraps it up for today. We'll find you tomorrow during the live show, which happens at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Best way to stay in the know is to subscribe to the YouTube channel, because then you'll get a sweet little notification that says, hey, we're doing stuff. And if nothing else, have yourselves a wonderful Thursday, because that's the day that it is. And we'll catch you back here tomorrow.